and we only have an hour, and I really like to respect everybody's time. So welcome everyone. It's great to have you here tonight. My name is Nicole Lucas. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Smart Precinct North Queensland. For those of you that haven't heard of us before, we're a new organisation that's designed to foster innovation and entrepreneurship here in the Townsville region. We at Smart Precinct are very excited to be hosting the first of 3 Best in Business events with the support of Oz Industry. We're featuring some of Townsville's most talented people, like the lovely Jayne Arlett here today. From these events, we're hoping that you guys will all find some inspiration to keep pushing your business forward. And for those that might just be sitting on an idea, we actually hope that you'll actually get it going. When putting these events together, we really did think who was the best person we could get to really showcase Townsville and all we have to offer. So Jayne was first on our list as a local icon and successful serial entrepreneur. We really couldn't think of anybody else. So thank you, Jayne. We really appreciate you being here. The plan for the evening, Jayne is going to share her personal experiences as an entrepreneur and also a business mentor. She's learnt so much over the years. She's got a very extensive history. And with COVID and everything that's happening in the world, she's also going to share how we can set our businesses up to be sustainable and make sure we survive and thrive regardless of what is happening, whether it's a flood or a pandemic. Jayne's got some tips for us to make sure that we'll survive it. We're then going to open the session up for questions from the audience. So as we said before, please drop your questions into the chat function if you've got something burning and you're worried that you're going to forget it. Otherwise, you've got the option where we have the lovely Kerry in the background who's going to unmute you. So you can actually use the raise hand function, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen. And Kerry will find you and unmute you, and you can actually speak directly to Jayne. At the end of this session, I'll talk a little bit about our wonderful sponsor, Oz Industry, and how you guys as SMEs and entrepreneurs can connect with them and some of the benefits of doing so. So let's get started. This is going to take a while to introduce Jayne. I would recommend, if you're not sitting down, put your feet up. It's going to take a while. Jayne is the CEO of Jayne Arlett Consulting, which is a small business consulting firm which focuses on driving profitability and growth. She really focuses on big business thinking, which is something I would like her to talk a little bit about later. She's also an accomplished entrepreneur in her own right, launching and building a variety of companies under the Arlett Group of companies to more than $10 million in annual revenue. She has more than 25 years of experience, a variety of board and CEO roles, and the average revenues of which are between 50K and 1 billion, and yet she still manages to volunteer. She volunteers for the Townsville Women Business Circle in the mentoring groups there, and has also operated as a small business mentor for the Small Business Recovery Centre, helping different business owners through the floods. Jayne is a passionate advocate of small businesses and entrepreneurship, particularly in the regions, and I think we're very, very lucky to have her here. In particular, we're very lucky to have her here tonight to talk to us. So I'm going to start by asking Jayne a few questions. And the first one, which I think we're all very curious about, Rollercoaster Junkie, tell me more. Where did that come from?
Well, firstly, thank you, Renee, for that introduction. That was lovely. Thank you very much. And yes, I've had quite a journey over the years, and I will say that the reason why I have so much advice to give to people about how to survive is because I've been through it all, and pretty much all the highs and lows that most people are feeling in their businesses right now. I've been there. And so where did Rollercoaster Junkie come from? Well, I literally and figuratively am a roller coaster junkie. I think I grew up in the UK, and I think my very first roller coaster ride was at one of those beautiful little beachside towns where they had like a fairground and had roller coasters on the beachside, which was gorgeous. And I think I've been hooked ever since. And I think it's just a great metaphor for business, and it's also a great metaphor for life. Life is full of, of ups and downs, and certainly if you sign up for business, that's what you're signing up for, whether you realised it or not. And you're going to have some wonderful, magnificent, exhilarating highs, but you're going to also have some devastating lows. And I think the issue is that if you're not prepared for those lows, they're going to hurt a lot more than if you had some preparation in place prior. And the best example of the low is what we're going through right now. You know, and I mean, while none of us could have prepared for COVID-19, none of us realised that something like this could or would happen. We could have been better prepared. I've become somewhat of a disaster expert in recent years. I've worked with businesses following Cyclone Debbie in 2017, and any number of businesses impacted by the floods in the Townsville region in 2019, and we were just starting to get them through that, and then of course we got smacked with COVID, which was very difficult. But with the businesses that were lucky enough to get hold of the resilience grants post Townsville floods, and I would say there are still some of those grants available, so perhaps we can talk about grants a little bit later on. But I work with one company, for example, Rockfield, who's a local engineering company that's got a national footprint, a fairly large company, and their CEO, Govinda Padney, and myself worked for quite some time on building their resilience because they were impacted by floods. And he said that the resilience work that we did post the floods stood them in good stead for dealing with COVID-19. So certainly if you can have a look at what resilience is from a business context and put some things in place, it can help you weather the storm a lot better than if you didn't have those things in place.
So what is your recommendation there, Jayne? Is it diversifying, you know, the 80-20 rule? Do you make sure that you only work 4 days a week on your main product and you're making sure you're going in different directions? Do you look at having a side hustle? What do you recommend to entrepreneurs?
Yeah, look, it's different for different business, but look, probably the main thing is have a plan. You know, have a plan. Most businesses, look, the world is not short of good ideas, whether you're a tech startup entrepreneur or whether you're a bricks and mortar store, it doesn't really matter. Good ideas are, you know, frankly, a dime a dozen, really they are. They come and they go. Having a good idea is not what makes you a successful entrepreneur. Being able to enact that is. And being able to commercialize your good idea. And, you know, marketing is key. I always talk about marketing as being the rainmaker of business. You haven't got a good marketing strategy in place, you're going to be in trouble. But it's really having a strategy for who you are now, what's your business about, really understanding what you're doing, why you're doing it, and so on and so forth, and where do you want to go. And then when you hit a hurdle along the way, so, you know, the roller coaster, the ups and the downs, you're going to have the ups and you're going to have the downs, but you know what, after every down there will come an up, as long as you're ready for it and you're well prepped to do it. So in terms of talking about diversification, this is what we have had to see through COVID-19. And I talk a lot about pillars of business. So I work with people and develop a very simple business on a page where we talk about your values. Who are you in business? What are you about? What is it you're trying to achieve? And then a purpose statement or a vision mission statement, whatever you prefer, about really cementing your position in the marketplace. And then beneath that sits the pillars of your business. And you probably want between 3 and 5 pillars, which are your key revenue areas of your business. If you have one pillar, you're in a very vulnerable position when a disaster hits. So if we want to take it into a restaurant, for example, so if you've got a full service restaurant, just to pick an entity just to discuss, that's a one pillar business. They've got one pillar, which is full food service in the restaurant. So when COVID came, they had to shut down, they were stuffed basically. So what did they do? Well, the smart ones adapted and created some other pillars essentially. And so we had people go to full service, to takeaway, and then maybe to you know, home delivery as well, and some into catering as well. So some of them then went to 4 pillars instead of 1. But if they had those in place, you'll speak to any number of business owners that found that very difficult to do because they hadn't done any prep work on that and they weren't prepared for it. But any business that's reliant on one thing and one thing only is in a very, very vulnerable position, and that is not a resilient business.
So what do you recommend to choose those pillars? Sometimes people can choose things that maybe aren't that they might choose the path of least resistance, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's something that's going to help their business remain sustainable. So how do you work with founders right now to work through that and figure out what is the best thing for them?
Yeah, look, I think it really is interesting. And again, every business is different and everybody knows that. Every business should be different. That's got to have a USP. And so it really is a matter of just looking at, again, back to basics. So who is the business? What are your core values? What is it that you're trying to achieve in the world? And then having pillars. You note I said between about 3 and 5 pillars. We don't want to have 20 pillars because you can't keep sharp focus on that. And that's the whole point of having this system, that we can develop several elements that are going to bring revenue into the business. And then we report to those and we basically defend and protect those to the nth degree. Those are our business. And so when one's a bit wonky, we want to try and rebuild that where we can, but we want to keep a close focus on the others. In terms of deciding what those pillars are, it depends on the business, and it really is a matter of, one of the other problems that we have with businesses is when trouble strikes, they'll chase new and shiny. Or even when trouble doesn't strike, they'll chase new and shiny. We all love new and shiny. But it's really important to have that razor sharp focus on who you are and what you're about. And then, boom, we execute to deliver that. But if you're always chasing new and shiny ideas and easy pickings, if they're not consistent with your values and not consistent with the purpose that you've set for your business, then we really shouldn't be doing that. And again, we have seen that with this COVID, that people are just grasping at straws and just running around doing anything to make a buck. And it's just not sustainable in the long run. And particularly if it's not consistent with who you are as a business, it's just not going to last.
So what are you seeing with the recent pandemic with local businesses? What are some of the things that you're seeing where people are making mistakes and also where people are prevailing? Have you got some great stories, innovation stories, where people have really thought outside the box?
Yeah, look, I think there's lots. And whenever a disaster strikes, we talk about the 3 R, we talk about adapt and pivot, which has been done to death. There's lots of catchphrases going around. And one of my favourite lines at the moment is the word unprecedented. The use of the word unprecedented is unprecedented. I've never heard that word used so much as I have in the last couple of months. But you know what? Pandemics aren't unprecedented, and this is why I bang on about building resilience and being prepared, because just have a look in the last couple of years. I mean, in 2017, as I said, we had Cyclone Debbie, and then in 2019, early 2019, we were underwater here in Townsville, whereas other parts of the country were in drought. Later on in 2019, it seemed like half Australia was on fire. And then just when we thought we were getting through all of that disasters, we get smacked by COVID. And look, we have had pandemics before. They just haven't been global. They haven't been on this scale. I mean, we've had MERS, we've had SARS, we've had bubonic plague. We've had any number of sort of things over any number of years. And we do get infectious diseases that spread fairly rapidly over areas. We've just been fortunate they haven't impacted Australia until recent times, and they certainly haven't impacted quite so widespread. So look, in terms of responding, there's 3 things that you can do when a crisis occurs. You can do nothing and carry on. And to be fair, that does work for some businesses. If your business is relatively minorly impacted, then that's not a bad response. You can shut up shop and hide in the cupboard until it looks like it's safe to come out. And there's any number of businesses that have done that, businesses that are closed up and haven't reopened yet, particularly in the food and bev sort of type area. Probably not sustainable for any great length of time, or you can adapt and pivot, which is the buzzword of the moment. And I like to say, when we're talking about building resilience, we really want to do the 3 R's. We want to respond, rebound, and then look at renewal. And so it's really, what's your initial response that you've got to do? So you may have had to shut up shop. I mean, think about what's happening for bloody Victoria at the moment. Shutting up shop, dealing with all of that, reopening, and then having to go through the whole thing again. And sadly, there'll be many businesses that just simply won't survive that. But you need to respond initially, as you have to in any crisis. Then you need to think about how can we rebound, and then when you open, you're doing so in a renewal stage. You should be, businesses should be growing and changing through this. And businesses that are going back to, business as normal, well, there is no normal. The whole way that we do business has changed. And so in terms of renewal, certainly, as we spoke about early on, we have learnt to embrace technology like never before. And I think that we've had probably about 3 to 5 years worth of digital learning in a matter of months. And it's been really interesting. Again, I sit on some fairly large boards, and we've seen some fairly large and traditional organisations that haven't wanted to embrace technology. They've just had to. And we're now doing evaluations on what learnings have we had out of that, and how can we take the good things of that, and how can we leave ones behind. One of which is, there's so many things that have happened. Working from home has proven to be pretty good for a lot of people. It's crap if you have toddlers, I can tell you that. I don't have any, but I have lots of friends that do. But it's difficult if for some people it's really hard. But for other people it works really well. And I have one company that went to work from home very early on, and they've got a fellow that works with them that is mildly on the autistic spectrum and very high functioning, but is one of these annoying people. He'll have to, if he's in a group office environment, he has to talk to people all the time. He has to touch them. He has to, he gets distracted, and he distracts other people very easily. And from work from home, he's thrived in that environment. And he came to myself and the business owner. He said, I love working from home because I don't distract other people. So he recognizes not other people distracting him. He's the one, he's the distractor. And he recognized that. And he recognizes that when he hasn't got people around him, he doesn't feel the need to distract anyone because there's nobody there to distract. So he just gets in and does his work, and he loves it. So he's functioning at a much better level, and other people in the office are functioning at a much better level. And he's asked to continue to work from home. Again, other people don't do so well, and other people need people around them. And so it's a matter of just sort of flexing. And I'm working with any number of businesses now, that particular business is an example, where he's asked to work from home several days a week, but he still recognises that he does better. He needs to engage with people and so on and so forth. And so I think this hybrid sort of model has been one of the great learnings that we've had. And I had another conversation with another client just this morning, and she doesn't have an online offering now. And I just said to her, you are crazy she's setting up a new business. You are crazy setting up any business right now that doesn't have an online offering. And if you have an existing business and it doesn't have an online offering, I strongly suggest you get one.
I think that brings up a really good point, Jayne. We had the Queensland's Chief Entrepreneur, Leanne Kemp, here last week, and I asked her from what she was seeing around the state, were people treating COVID-19 as a short-term thing? Was this something that they just thought, it's okay, I'll just get to the end of it and then I'll be okay? And she said the scary thing to her was that was how a lot of people were thinking, particularly in the regions. And I think everyone needs to look at this and embrace the fact that this is here to stay. And if it's not COVID, it will be something else. There is always something else. So I think that's really valid. I am curious, though, do you think that entrepreneurship and dealing with the highs and lows, is that something that is within people? Is that a nature, not nurture thing? Do you think it suits a certain type of personality and some people don't have it?
Yeah, and look, certainly in terms of entrepreneurship, can anybody be an entrepreneur? No, is the answer. Anybody can have a crack. I should rephrase that. Can anybody be a successful entrepreneur? No. Anybody can have a go at it, but you know what? It's hard slog, and I'm used that term entrepreneur both for the tech startup sort of space, but also for our bricks and mortar, just a business owner. It's hard work, and you've got to have grit and tenacity. You've got to have agility. You've got to have so many factors. Typically, and I see a lot of businesses, my job is to, as a business consultant, is to help businesses grow and develop. Some people are coachable and some people are not. Some people, most people that set up a business, whether it be, as I said, tech or bricks and mortar, they set it up because they love something or because they're good at something, or both. But they're usually very passionate about what they want to do. And as I said, it's having a good idea is not what works. We all have good ideas, and nobody's short of a good idea typically, if you drill down, most people have got some good ideas, but it's converting it to reality that's the difficulty. And so, you know, I always caution people when people come to me and say, look, I've got this great idea and I want to set up a business. And it's just simply not that easy. So, you know, and it really starts for me, you know, strategy. You've got to have a strategy behind what you're doing. People that just love coffee and want to open a coffee shop, they can make the best coffee in the world, but if they don't understand how to market it, if they don't understand how to manage the finances on the back end, that's where most businesses come unstuck, I can tell you. You know, if they don't understand, you know, how to manage staff, you know, there's a zillion things to do here. No, it's not just about having a good idea, and no, not everybody should go into business. And the reason why I caution so strongly on that is I've seen, sadly, many people not make it. And the consequences of that are fairly significant, personally, financially, emotionally. And it's just not something. I have had to help several businesses through closure. It's not something I enjoy doing. And I will also say that most people leave it way too long. And that's something that I think, you know, part of this government supports right now should be to assist people to exit with dignity. So I think there's a lot of support at the moment to help people grow, and that's great. But some people use grants to just help them last a little bit longer, and it's death by 1,000 cuts, and that's very unpleasant to watch.
So when is the right time to exit? When you are someone, a passionate business owner, you've been working on something for many years, you really see that, or you feel that this could go somewhere, but maybe it's not the right time or something's going wrong. How do you assess it from a rational position where you can actually say, no, it's time to let it go?
And look, definitely having some external advice on that is really helpful, because, you know, you can't, you know, people get very emotionally attached to their business, as they should. You know, that's what we want, people that are passionate about what they're doing. But it's very difficult to see the problems yourself. So having some external advice, whether that be from your lawyer or your accountant or a business consultant, is helpful. And look, it's a fine line, because it's, you know, I don't necessarily want to equate business to gambling, but in some ways it is. You know, just the next, I'll get lucky on the next one, you know, and I guess when is the right time? The right time is before you lose everything. That's the right time. And I've seen somebody that I know personally, you know, who's not too long ago lost everything, house, marriage, you name it. And that's not a pretty situation to be in. And, you know, seriously, I think we need to, there are any number of businesses now that are just hanging on, and they're supported by the, you know, the rent reductions from the mandatory code of conduct into commercial leasing. So they've got rent reductions so they can manage that bit. You know, they've got JobKeeper to be able to pay their staff and so on and so forth, but it's artificial. And I sit with people and I do forward cash flow forecasts, and as soon as JobKeeper sort of dries up, we're in a world of pain. But by then we've sort of, you know, we're just bleeding. There was a business that I worked with, did a bit of mentoring through the Mentoring for Growth program last year, and she'd actually taken a job. She had a bricks and mortar store, and she'd actually taken another job to help pay. In fact, this isn't an uncommon story, to take a job to support your business. And I can tell you now, as soon as that happens, you're in trouble. So you need to exit before you get to that stage.
So what are some of the support services you would recommend? So people are starting to feel like, well, things aren't going really well here. They might go to their accountant. They might go, like, how do you know what is a credible resource where you're going to get the right advice? There's many mentors, business mentors and coaches out there, but are they the right people?
Yeah, look, difficult one. I think it's very personality related too, with certainly with business coaches and also with your accountant. And I will say, I've got, you know, the greatest respect for accountants as a general rule, but with things, when things have been moving so quickly through this COVID period, you know, we've had accountants giving advice that's old. You know, and sometimes it's only days old, but you know, when we were in the early stages of COVID, things like what was happening with JobKeeper was changing every 2 or 3 days. They were updating, and you know, sometimes we're getting old information. So first thing I do is encourage people to get advice, but also to do their own research and make sure that they're in control of the decisions that they're making. If they're working with a business consultant, please work with somebody that's actually been there and done that. Not somebody that's, you know, maybe 20 years of age and have sold a few widgets and think all of a sudden they're a business consultant. You probably want somebody that's sort of been around a while. But look, one of the best ways that people can get support that's that's good is to go into mentoring. And the state government's got a great program called Mentoring for Growth. So if people just Google Mentoring for Growth Queensland, it'll come up. It's government volunteer-based program, and they can get a one-on-one consultation with a mentor or a couple of mentors, and usually get some quite good independent advice from that program. You mentioned before the Townsville Businesswomen's Circle, so they run mentoring groups as well, and there's a couple of other ones that are, you know, are free, or I think with the Townsville Businesswomen's Circle it's included in the membership, but certainly the Mentoring for Growth program is at no cost, so that's a good starting point. But I'd probably say the other thing that you can do is just contact a mentor, contact somebody that you respect in business that's maybe got a little bit more years up the road from where you are, a little bit higher stage than where your business or your tech startup is at, and have a chat. And I often say to people, you know, buy them a coffee, you know, and just ring and say, hey, you know, Nicole, I really like what you've done in XYZ space. Would you mind if I could buy you a coffee and chew your ear for half an hour? And you know what, you just got to have a bit of a tough skin. A lot of people say, look, I'd love to, but I'm too busy, or no, not interested. You know, that's okay. But you'll jag one or two that will actually say, yes, sure, you know, I'll have a coffee with you and share some advice. And again, if you can get advice from somebody that's independent, that's helpful. The worst people to probably go to for advice on your business are your friends and family, because they'll tell you what they think you want to hear. Yeah, and that's not helpful. So you really need somebody that's going to give you a non-emotive, independent advice.
I will say off the back of that, I have found most people in Townsville in particular are very generous when it comes to giving up their time to the up-and-comers to give some mentoring advice. I think people are very generous here. Much like yourself, Jayne, you've been mentoring me for a long time now. I think I've known you for 3 years.
Put me lots of coffee, Nicole, that's why.
Can you tell us a little bit about the government support packages? Where do people go? There's a lot of different websites you can go to at the moment. What would you recommend as the most credible source, particularly for us in the regional centre? You did mention before the resilience grants as well, and if you could explain a little bit about those.
In terms of where to go, just remind me to come back to the grants, but in terms of where to go, government websites. So if you just Google Grants Queensland and Grants Australia, you'll come up with the Queensland Grants website and the National Grants website. Those are by far your best ones to start with. They've both got sort of little, you know, answer these questions to help guide you through which grants might be suitable for you. There's any number of grants out there at different times. Grants come and go. And we've obviously got some very specific ones now. Grants are often industry specific. So for example, we're seeing some grants coming out now for the tourism sector. We're seeing some grants coming out for the arts sector too, that's been terribly badly impacted. So if you're involved in those areas, then you need to sort of be looking at getting onto that. We, as you well know, we have some good grants out there for innovation, and Oz Industry have got some great programs, particularly to guide entrepreneurs through an innovation sort of program. So, you know, those are areas that people can go to get some advice. So that's probably where to go to get information. The other one I should say is Regional Development Australia, RDA. They do get on their newsletters, and all of these things, you know, hop on, click on and give them your email, and they'll send you updates with what's happening in that grant space. But the other thing I'd say about grants, particularly regionally, is we don't have a grants culture here, and we need to get on board with that. When I first set up my businesses 25 odd years ago, I was very young when I started. When I first set up my businesses, we didn't have grants. They just kind of weren't a thing. What, somebody's going to help you set up your business? No, you just do it by yourself. Whereas now there are any number of grants available, and if you're not getting on board with those, then you're doing yourself a disservice. So a couple of ones that are around at the moment that might be impactful for people in our region, in the Townsville and north sort of West Queensland region. One is the Resilience Grant. That was set up specifically post the 2019 Townsville Northwest Queensland floods. So it's specific to certain LGAs, local government areas. So you can hop on the website. If you Google Resilience Grants Queensland, it'll come up, and then you can go through and see if you're eligible for that. But essentially, if you were impacted, and that includes being indirectly impacted, then you can apply for a $10,000 resilience grant. Now, a lot of people say, oh, I didn't get flooded, therefore I'm not eligible. Well, no, if you were indirectly impacted, as in even if you just had to close, I mean, almost every business in Townsville is eligible for the resilience grant because we physically couldn't travel and couldn't get around, the roads were flooded. So if your business was closed for a period of time, if you suffered any economic loss, which most businesses did, because even if you could open your doors, other people couldn't get to you, and so there was, and people didn't have money, and so everyone's income sort of dropped. So most businesses in Townsville will be eligible for that. Now, that's a $10,000 grant, and it's specifically for coaches and mentors to help you with growth and development. So you can work with somebody to develop business plans. You can have a regular coaching program working with somebody. You can actually use it for marketing as well, which, as I said, is the rainmaker of business. So that's really valuable. And you can also split it between a couple of consultants. So that's a good thing. And the other one now is also $10,000, which is kind of a spin-off from that resilience grant, is the COVID grant, and it's called the Adaptation Grant. So specifically set up for businesses that are impacted by COVID. So you need to demonstrate for that you've had a 30% drop in income for 1 month. So essentially, if you're eligible for JobKeeper, you're eligible for the Adaptation Grant. You need to have a turnover of over $75,000 a year, but under 1.3 million payroll, which is the payroll tax limit. So if you don't pay payroll tax, and if you earn over $75,000, you must also employ one person other than yourself, other than the business owner. So if you've got some other person on staff, then you're eligible for that. $10,000 there again. I've actually been quite critical of the state government on this grant. I was one of the people lobbying to get it, but when they put it out, they made it very, very general, very broad. It's called an adaptation grant, and the intent of it is to allow your business to adapt and pivot and develop in a different way. So you can certainly use it for, again, business consulting. You can use it for digital. You can use it for marketing. And those are the three things that I suggest people do look at. Get your digital footprint happening, get some marketing happening, your rainmaker, and then speak to a business consultant about what sort of coaching can work for you. But unfortunately, they also opened it up so it can pay your rent and your utilities bills and so on. So unfortunately, a lot of people have just used it for that. Now that's helpful. That's great. I'd love somebody to pay my rent for a period of time for $10,000 worth. That's awesome. But does that help my business grow and adapt? Not in any way, shape or form. And this is what I was talking about. We talk about zombie businesses, which is the businesses that are just hanging in there right now because of things like JobKeeper and the reduction in rent from the mandatory code of conduct. And also then they get things like an adaptation grant, and oh great, there's another $10,000 that'll pay my rent. Well, frankly, if you need that to pay your rent, you're probably in some financial distress. And this is that death by 1,000 cuts that I was talking about. So, I really encourage people, if you're eligible for the adaptation grant, please apply. But what I would say that you should do is please use it for something to encourage your business to adapt. That's what it's actually intended for. And the other thing I'd say about that is that for the first time in my knowledge, the state government, what they did do, which was great, which I also lobbied for, was they split round two. So the first round was taken up within, I think, 3 or 4 days. And so they opened a second round 2 on the 1st of July, and they split it 40% for Southeast Queensland, essentially, and 60% for the rest of Queensland, which is based by population. Well, Southeast Queensland got taken up in one day, exhausted their whole allocation, and regional Queensland, embarrassingly, still hasn't exhausted our allocation. And that's what comes back to what I was talking about before, that we are not set up. We do not have a grants culture in regional Queensland. And there's a few reasons for that. One is which in Brisbane, businesses tend to be bigger. And so they may have more staff available to them. They may have a grants team. They may have all sorts of things working there. Typically, regional businesses are smaller and don't have the same resources. The other thing is that we have a lot of pride in our regions. And it's kind of like, there's other people worse off than me. And that's just not how grants work. You know, the whole point of grants really encourage people to understand what grants are available to them and to use them to your advantage. Now, the whole point of the government putting grants out is to allow you, the adaptation grant is to allow your business to adapt and to recover and to build resilience and all this good stuff with the intent that it'll grow. And if it grows, you can then employ more people. And if we employ more people, we've then helped our economy. So that's why the government puts grant monies out, is to actually improve our economy. So we actually want good businesses. We want businesses that are doing okay. We actually want you to take a grant and to do even better. That's the point.
That's really great, Jayne. Just so everybody knows, Renee Chilton from Oz Industry has been putting all of the websites for different different sites that list all the grants here. So please collect them out of the chat. We do have a question from Suzanne Blom, and I just want to raise that with you, Jayne. I don't know if you can see it there. She said, I'm hearing that not many of our local businesses have access to the help that is out there. Most say that they haven't lost enough business and do not want to burden the government. This actually goes in line with what you were just saying. It is important that they do access this funding, as it will support them as we get further into this pandemic. Hear, Sue. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Absolutely, and trust me, the government is not burdened by your grant application. The government wants, that's why they put grants out there. They want businesses to take them up. They want you to grow and develop. So please check if you're eligible, and if you are, then yeah, absolutely apply.
I do have a comment and a question, Jayne. We deal with a lot of founders at Smart Precinct. Many of them have applied for different grants, but they get knocked back. They feel that the application process is quite complex, and they're unprepared with the data to actually provide to government to support their application. So what advice would you give people? Who is there out there in our community who can support them? Would you recommend that? And how can they get prepared in advance?
Well, actually, there's any number of people out there that can help you. I would agree with that. It can be complex. And like I said, when I talked about businesses down in Brisbane, some of them have grants departments or grants people, because there actually is a process. It's a skill set in applying for grants. We actually have, I think we have online Renee Madsen here. I think she was listening in. She was on there before. But Renee runs grant writing workshops, and she actually set one up specifically for the adaptation grant. I think she ran one later this week, and I think there might be another one coming up on Monday. I'm not quite sure. Maybe we can get that and circulate that out.
Absolutely. Renee, are you here?
I can't see her on. Oh, yes, she is there. Renee.
Renee, can you drop your next workshop in the chat for everyone? Okay, there's a couple of comments here that I'll just read out to everyone. Bron Ainsworth, I have had my head office tell me that they're not happy that I've applied for a marketing grant when there is an in-house team for this. What do you suggest I tell them, and what happens if they tell me I can't use it as I have received the money already?
Oh, that's a tricky one. Bron, I believe that you're in a franchise situation, and I think you definitely have to be guided by what head office, what a franchise agreement allows you to do in terms of marketing. Most businesses within a franchise are permitted to do their own marketing and would be able to use a grant, but it would need to be in accordance with the guidelines set out by your franchisor. So I think that's just a matter of having some clarity on what you are allowed to do as a franchisee. And as long as it fits within those guidelines, then yes, you can. I mean, typically a franchisor, your marketing has to be on brand. But of course, you can use an external consultant firm to do that. It might just need to be rubber stamped by head office before you release it, perhaps. But I'm happy to chat to you offline on that. In terms of what happens to the money, if you've received it and if you are unable to execute the money, you must return it. You cannot use it for a purpose other than what you've been approved for. You can apply to the grants team to have that varied. So, for example, if you are unable to use it for marketing, you might, and I'm not sure which grant that was, if it was the adaption or resilience or some other grant, but whatever grant that was, if you're unable to use it for marketing, you might be able to write to the grants department and say, I can't use it for this purpose, can I please use it for business coaching or for digital online capabilities or something else. But you can't change the purpose of the grant without approval.
Sorry, Jane, to interrupt there. Can I just ask as well, are you seeing many businesses here in Townsville that are receiving grants that are successful, like to give everybody confidence that this is happening?
Yes, do you mean with the adaptation grants?
Yep, yes.
Yeah, they've been notoriously bad. And I have regular conversations with our Small Business Commissioner and also with the department that's running these adaptation grants. Where do I start? Anyway, I won't get too political. The grants are good. We want people to take them up. They are having the process of them reviewing the grants, and I mean this is taxpayers' dollars that they're giving out, $10,000 a pop, yeah. So we need to make sure that they're going out to people appropriately and they're meeting the guidelines and so on. There's actually 3 people that actually process each grant, so it actually goes through quite a process before it's approved, which it should do because it's our government money, and as a taxpayer I want them to not give it out to people that don't deserve it. So the problem is that because this happened all of a sudden, there wasn't a grants team set up to do it, and so they just had to pull public servants from here, there and everywhere to process it. So I do understand it's a difficult thing. I think all of round 1 was supposed to have been finalised before the 31st of July, and I don't believe that that has happened. I think there are still some people waiting on those grants, which is disappointing. I would like to think it would come through fairly soon in the next week or 2, but I'm not holding my breath on that one. In terms of the round 2, some of those have already been processed before round 2 has been completed, which is another issue. Round 2 is actually being managed and processed separately to round 1. So that is a bit of a difficult issue. All I'd say is be patient. And the other thing is the poor old resilience grants have actually been put on hold to manage the adaptation grant. So look, it gets complex and I don't want to bore people with all the ins and outs, but if you've applied for a grant, if you've had an acknowledgement letter, which you should get after you apply, then you're in the system. And if you haven't had a rejection letter, then you are definitely still in the system. So just be patient, hang in there.
Peter Braid has just announced that he got approved for his first round on Friday, so it was very slow, but thank you, Peter, that's wonderful news. Also, Sue has mentioned, Sue Blom, again, thank you. Local government can also help with grant education. I believe you can find that through the Townsville City Council website.
Yes, actually, Sue, I will have a little crack on that. Thing that you have got there does not include any local grant writers. I think you've got a thing on the Townsville City Council website for support for people applying for grants, and it's a cut and paste of some national sort of program. So there's any number of panelists on there, not one of them is local. And I know Renee Madson's taken that up and challenged that, and I'm very supportive of that challenge. So please go to some local grant writers and support local. Yeah. But look, Renee, I'm not sure that Renee's been able to stick a thing up there now, but
sorry, I am here. Sorry, Jane.
Renee, do you still? I know that you set up adaptation grant workshops. Do you have one coming up this week?
Yes, I do. Thank you for asking. I was hoping to let everyone know. So we've just arranged another one. There's actually 2. They're both being held on Wednesday, the 19th of August, and there is a morning session and an evening session. So we're hoping everyone can attend at a time that's convenient to them.
And I believe, Renee, that it's not just a lecture slide work thing, it actually is a workshop, and so people actually get started on the grant application. Is that right?
That's exactly right, yes. So the first hour of the workshop we're going to go through the guidelines and just talk about what's expected of the grant, what are the kinds of things you can spend it on, what you can't spend it on, some of the really tricky things that you need to know. For example, the money needs to be spent within 6 months. And there's a few other little slippery things like that. And then the second hour is actually hands-on, where you can bring your laptop, you can bring your documents, you can get started with your application, and I'll be there to provide some one-on-one help, and it'll at least just get you on the path to getting your application done with some support.
Thanks, Renee. And I just note that Sue Blom, who is a councillor on Townsville City Council, she is all about local, which she is, I know that, and she's just asked for an email. So Renee, I will connect you through with Sue Blom, and we might get you guys to talk and get some local grant writers on that website, please. That'd be great. But Nicole, so thanks, Renee.
Thank you.
Nicole, that might answer some of that question, that you were saying founders find it very difficult, and it
yes.
is. Grant applications can be difficult. I will say the easiest grant application I've ever seen was the resilience grant application, as it should be, because it was a disaster grant application. It was designed to get money out to people fairly easily and quickly. So that's the easiest one. The second easiest one I've ever seen is the adaptation grant, which again, it should be easy because it is designed to help people in need right now. Once you start getting into the innovation grants that you're playing in, those are more complex and more challenging. And there's different sorts of grants too, so people are aware. And actually somebody's just put up there about Jared Byrne is running grant writing workshops as well through Townsville City Libraries, and again, excellent. So but that's what we want people to do, is to use the local ones, please.
There were 2 questions we missed, Jayne, from Karen, I believe. I'll just find you. Apologies, guys. Oh, Cara Rowe, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to say your name. Is there any grants available for small businesses under 75K?
Oh, yeah, that's a tricky one, Carew. The adaptation grant they actually say it's for micro and small businesses, but they have limited it as a minimum of $75,000 turnover. I think the resilience grant didn't have that limit on it, and so if you're a small business and you haven't applied with a turnover under 75,000, have a look at the resilience grant for that. There's nothing else around there, and look, I I chair a board with that advises our federal member, Philip Thompson, and we talk about this on a regular basis. And I also feed back into the state government through the Small Business Commissioner and through DESPIT directly, and we also talk about this regularly. The difficulty is that, again, if you remember, I spoke before about what is the intent of government putting grants, business grants out there, and typically it's to grow. And what does that mean to government? It means employment. And so that's why they kind of tend to say, well, we want you to have a turnover of over 75,000, because if you're under 75,000, you're probably not able to employ anybody. And they want you to be able to grow and adapt and employ more people. That's an unwritten rule, but that's essentially what the intent is. And so that's why these micro businesses miss out a lot, and it is difficult. And you can argue about the fairness until you're blue in the face, but fundamentally what the government's trying to do is not prop up a business. It's there to actually support you to grow and employ more people. And they just know statistically is that once you're over that $75,000 turnover, it's easier. If they give you a $10,000 grant, you're much more likely to employ somebody than if you earn, say, $40,000 a year and they give you $10,000. It actually probably still isn't going to be enough to get you to employ people. So harsh, but true, I'm afraid, Carew. So is there anything out there for you at the moment? No, but I'm working on it. This space.
we do have another question that kind of leads into that from Amanda Wright. She's developing a startup with a focus on keeping money within Townsville and supporting other local businesses. What grants are available for entrepreneurs and startups?
Yeah, probably much the same, not a lot at this stage in terms of the typical business grants. And I think I'd probably throw there over to Nicole and Renee in terms of particularly entrepreneurial startup type businesses. What are you aware that we've got floating around at the moment?
Well, Renee Chilton, if you don't mind, I'll throw you under a bus and get you to speak from your position, and then I'll speak a little bit from ours. Ours are more from a training position, incubator support, opportunities to learn, not so much to actually put into your business. So we can certainly support you in that way. But Renee, if you don't mind.
Not a problem. It's probably a bit the same as what you're doing. So the Australian government, and I can't talk on behalf of the Queensland government, but Oz Industry are part of the Australian government, and most of our startup and entrepreneurial grants are for the super innovative, novel to the world, never seen before type of business. So we've had a few in Townsville, Australian crayfish hatchery, safety culture. There's been a few that have come out of Townsville, but they had a product and a business model that was new to the world. So that's how they got their funding. But a lot of our assistance is about helping other people provide the advice to businesses. So we have incubator funding. So places like Smart Precinct, NQ could apply for and then provide advice. There's the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Program, which gives funding to people to provide low-cost digital workshops and advice. So, you know, they can run workshops for $30 per person and talk about how to get your website up and running or how to use social media effectively, things like that. And then we've got a whole lot of tools and information on business.gov.au. But in terms of grants for startups, as Jayne said, there's probably not a lot for a myriad of reasons, many of which she's covered quite well. So thank you.
From our position, Smart Precinct, we are working on a range of different products to actually support startups to grow. That will include mentoring. We're looking at different investment programs as well, but like anything, it has to be exactly what Jayne said and Renee said, something that's amazingly different, quite a standout. In order to get investment. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get to that level. But the thing that we can support in is definitely the training, the education to get you to the point that you need to be at. And a lot of that is actually free or supported by the Queensland government, which is really exciting. I did want to, well, we are getting to the end of the session. I did want to ask if there were any other questions quickly. I will ask Jayne a question to give you guys a chance to drop it into the chat, but I would like you to speak a little bit about your book that is coming out very soon. I don't know if you wanted me to talk about this, but I think it's going to be a benefit to everybody.
Yeah, thank you. I have in the process of writing a book, and it's called Big Little Business. And the idea of that is that, as Nicole said earlier, I've run my own suite of businesses, and I sit on a number of boards, and some of those are micro, little, tiny, not-for-profit boards through to, you know, large companies, and as you said, in excess of $1 billion turnover. And I guess over the years, I've learned that there's a lot of strategies that big business use that little business simply don't. And essentially what I do is work with businesses now as a business coach to take big business thinking and big business strategies and apply them to little businesses to get you up into that strategic element. And, you know, we sort of talked, you know, we started off, so that's what the book is. It's basically about all of the stuff that I do. It's about looking at who your business is, what it's about, what are those values, what's the purpose of your business, what are the pillars of your business, what are the foundations, what are the things that you do that allow you to deliver on that. And really, as I said before, you know, most businesses go into business because they're passionate about something, and that's great and all, but there's a heck of a lot more to it than that. So it really is kind of like lifting the hood of the bonnet, so to speak, and really understanding the workings and the mechanics of how a business works. And it's so much more than having a good idea, one of which is how to manage your financials. A lot of people are very frightened about their financials, and you know, I've got any number of businesses that get their P&Ls once a month from their accountant or their bookkeeper, and they dutifully print them off and staple them, and maybe scan the bottom line and put it away quickly and file it in a folder, and can't get it away quick enough. And they don't, you know, I talk about being a financial detective. I've always been a numbers girl. I love numbers. Numbers tell me the truth. Show me your P&Ls for the last couple of years and your balance sheet, and I can tell you probably more about your business than you know in many ways. You know, it's the truth. It shows us the highs and the lows. It shows us that roller coaster that we all go on. And you need to not be frightened by the numbers. And you need to not be frightened by any situation. And probably one of my strengths is I I tend to stay fairly calm under pressure. And I guess that's why I've fallen into being a crisis business consultant, because being calm under pressure is something that's quite valuable. But it's easy for me to do that because, as we spoke about before, going to an external advisor, you don't have the emotion. And so anyway, so the book is being pre-release is actually happening this Friday, and you can learn all about it on my website. But it actually is being properly released towards the end of the year before Christmas. But yeah, there'll be a little bit more information coming out Friday evening.
That's very exciting. I can't wait to read it. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Jayne, for tonight. I can see that nobody dropped any more questions in there. I do want to say you can contact Jayne if you do have any other questions for her. Head to her website, jaynearlett.com.au, or you can find her on LinkedIn. She's quite active on there, so if you sent Jayne a direct message, I'm sure she'd be happy to pick it up. I would like to do a last shout out to Oz Industry and the Department of Industry, Science, Energy and Resources for sponsoring this event. We're very grateful to have your support. For those that are not familiar with Oz Industry and don't know the details, and please excuse me for reading because I have not retained this information, but Oz Industry delivers support and guidance to businesses, and this includes startups and established businesses. So I do recommend, if you do have a business of any type and you do need some support, reach out to Renee. She's a lovely, lovely human being. You can contact her on 4750-2780. That's 4750-2780. They do have a couple of resources available right now to businesses. One is a business continuity guide, which you can find at business.gov.au, and there is also a digital transformation guide, which it's got different tips and tricks, to help you keep your business cyber safe, which has become really important in the recent climate. Thank you again, Jayne, for joining us. I'm so grateful that you gave us your time, as always. I do want to also thank Kerry, who's in the background managing this event. Also Kelly Stevenson from Support Local for giving a shout out to all of her lovely followers on what we're doing. I do want to highlight to everyone we are having another event, and that will be with Blake Pelling, who is a project lead from Safety Culture. He's a very dynamic human being, someone who's very interesting to listen to, and he will tell the story of Safety Culture and how they got their funding. So this is everything from bootstrapping, getting grants from Oz Industry, and then going to VC level. So I think that's really, for anyone that's in business and maybe looking at bringing some investment in, definitely a worthwhile conversation. That will be on the 26th of this month. You'll find details on the Smart Precinct website and also through our newsletter. We recommend you follow that. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, everyone. We really love that you're involved, and we do want to help anyone out there who's in the startup space, high growth businesses. Please reach out to Smart Precinct. We'll help you out. Sorry, Jayne.
Before we sign off, can I just say too, please everybody do sign in for that one. Safety Culture, for those of you that don't know, is Townsville's very own unicorn. We talk about a unicorn in tech startup field that, a normal bricks and mortar business, you kind of want to get growth over a period of time. In a tech startup, we're all looking for that J curve. And a unicorn is a very rare and magical beast, and it's when you've hit $1 billion turnover. And we've managed to do that right here with Safety Culture. But, their journey, if you want to talk about a roller coaster, they've had a roller coaster. So it looks like a nice smooth J curve. It's not. There's ups and downs, and Luke has learnt a lot of lessons along the way and built a lot of resilience. So that'll be an awesome one not to miss.
Absolutely. Thank you to Shan for mentioning the Townsville City Library's Entrepreneur in Residence program, which is currently live as well. That's running for the next month, and that's going to be a great event. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.